You are not of this world. No one is of this world. I am on the planet and you are on the planet. We're doing our dharma. We're doing our mission right now. Your physical body is in this world right now. Is we have to think outside of that linear context, because outside of that linear context is infinity. And that's what your soul is. So if I know that the soul essence of me was somewhere else, that means my soul essence goes on in perpetuity. How do you identify in this life? Because as long as you identify as a particular type of human being, you will be trapped in that context. You will be trapped in that life. When you come to know that and you live from that place, your life will change very dramatically and very quickly. You're listening to the Transform Your Life from the Inside Out podcast. This episode is titled The Human Context of Your Life. You know, this was literally prompted by a quote that I read recently. And that quote is, everything happens within the context of what is assumed. And if you look at your life, everything that happens in your life is what you assume is going to happen from a human identity-based level, which is why I'm calling this the human context of your life. In this episode, I want to explore a higher context. So I'd mentioned, things happen in your life based upon your assumptions of your life, but those assumptions come from the human aspect of you. And I want to explore a higher context of you. And when you live in that higher context, that eliminates the lower context, meaning the frame you live in, and it frees you up of many things that pull you backwards, drag you down, and create pain in your life. Keep listening. I want to start with a story here that I've told the story a couple of times here on the podcast, and I want to share it again. Personally, I think it's a really profound, very powerful metaphor, and it's also a very simple one. This was, I remember back in, 2016, thereabouts, I was over at Don Javier's for dinner, and he talked about the metaphor of, he says, imagine that you go on vacation, and wherever you go, you probably hop on an airplane, you fly there, you get a rental car. And with that rental car, wherever you're visiting, you drive around and you sightsee and you experience things and you're on a journey, but you're in a rental car. And then when it's time to go home, what you do is you drive that rental car back to the airport or the rental car place, generally at the airport. You leave the rental car and you go home. Very simple metaphor, but that literally is you. That is your life. This body that you're in, that's listening to me right now, that may be watching, that may be listening, it's a rental car. It's a container. It is a container that literally takes you on your journey. But when it's time for you to go home, you leave the rental car. You don't take it home with you. You leave it at the location. And when we start looking at our life that way, life starts to change. I want to share some profound wisdom with you. It's another simple statement. And I don't know where I heard this statement. It's been many, many years. I've said it here on the podcast. And my whole intention with this particular episode is to get you to start thinking differently. Because I know that many times when I hear something in a particular way or at a particular point in my life, I can hear that same thing 2, 3, 5 years later, and I hear it in a completely different way. Even now when I go back and I listen to a lot of the conversations of Don Javier, and I literally have literally 25 years of conversations recorded. And when I go back and listen, there are many things that were said that he may say the same thing today, but I hear it differently today. And that phrase that I want to share is this: be in this world, but not of this world. And I think this is an especially poignant message right now in this time of human history. And the reason I say that is because we are all in this world, meaning you might be in Venezuela, you might be in Australia, you might be in Canada, Crimea, South Africa, and you're in this world. And then what we look at here in the States, basically, I'm just going to tell you my opinion. I think what's going on in the human condition in the US is nothing more than a shit show. I mean, it's horrible. And you look at that, and then I look at, which is partly what prompted this episode, is what's really going on here. And what's going on in the world is based upon my context, my interpretations, and my expectations about the world. Now, when I said it is an interpretation and it is a shit show going on in the United States, in particular economically, socially, and politically, what I look at is how does that pertain to me? Because see, if I am being in this world and I live from that place, I'm in the shit show. But I recognize and I know that I'm not of this world. You know, I've asked you before in various episodes, where were you before you came here? And you were somewhere before you incarnated on this planet. That is physics. Energy does not die, it simply transfers form, transformation. So I know I was somewhere else. And if I know, and I know it, I don't think it, I don't believe it, I know it. So if I know that the soul essence of me was somewhere else, that means my soul essence goes on in perpetuity. It goes on for infinity. It goes on forever, eternally. And so I look at that context and I'm like, why would I ever want to live in this shit show? Now, I am on the planet and you are on the planet because we're doing our dharma. We're doing our mission right now for things. Every one of us agreed to incarnate at this time. I remember many years ago, I remember the friend that I was with. His name was Greg. Greg Liddell, actually. We were good friends in college, and we were actually grabbing a beer somewhere in Austin back in 1988, 89. And I had a really good conversational relationship with Greg. He's just somebody that I could talk to. And I said, Greg, you know, I feel like I was dropped off on this planet and I feel like I don't belong on this planet. And I think many people listening to this podcast and other episodes might identify with that in some way. We just started a cohort at TCP, the Transformational Coaching Program. You had the opportunity, if you've listened for any amount of time, you knew about it. And if you're not in it, well, that's a choice you made. And for every choice, there is a price. But I look at the people coming into TCP, and I remember one time I had about 800 people in TCP. And I said, how many of you feel like you don't belong on this planet? And the screen just lit up with people saying, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me. And I know it's because my energy attracts similar frequency and vibration energy. And we're like, how in the hell did I get dropped off on this planet? So what I'm sharing here is you are in this world. I am in this world. But there's a difference between being in this world and of this world. And whether or not you recognize it, you want to argue, which I wouldn't do with you, you are not of this world. No one is of this world in terms of the continuity of your soul, the essence of your soul. So your physical body is in this world right now, but your soul energy is not of this world right now. You know, something Don Javier said to me one time, I love the way that he put it. He said, this physical body, meaning his physical body, is my point currently, is my point of references in the universes. And I thought that's a really interesting way to put it. It's your point of reference. So your physical body right now, your point of reference is wherever you are on this planet and the Milky Way galaxy and this particular, well, in the solar system, in this galaxy, and we are one of hundreds of billions of galaxies. But this right now, for your soul energy, is your point of reference. So, some thoughts I want to share with you in this episode is what we pretty much do is we put everything within the frame, within the context of this physical world that we live in. And the interesting thing about this is most people have never stopped to recognize that if I make my entire context, if I choose to experience the entire context of my life as a life on this planet, what we do then, most often, and most people, is we work from past context to understand our world. And the reason we do that is because most people contextualize their life, meaning their life on the planet, Susan or Bob or Joe or Eric or Mary or whomever, we tend to contextualize our life by linear thinking. And that would be by time, by age, by geography, by chronology, and basically by our composite human experience. And what we have to start doing, it's important that we start doing this, especially at this time on the planet, because humanity is growing and evolving. The species is evolving, is we have to think outside of that linear context, because outside of that linear context is infinity. And that's what your soul is. I find that the more that people grow, and I see this a lot in TCP, and a lot of people ask me, when people start, it's a 13-week program. And when we're done, many people will say, I just don't resonate with the people in my life like I used to. And I have, and to the best of my knowledge, there's no one in my college fraternity that listens to my podcast, but I have an event coming up in June that I was invited to. And I've been out of college now since 1987. So what is that, 40, 43, 40, 38 years? Something like that. I mean, geez, time flies when you're having fun. But all of us were really close in college. And we literally did all the fraternity things, all the shenanigans, and all the things that young men, young guys do in college. We did all of that. And these guys that are getting together, we get together every couple of years, and we haven't since 2019 maybe. And the guys are wanting to get together again in a couple of months. And they made sure I was invited, and I'm grateful for that. And initially I said, yeah, I'm going to go. And I've been thinking about it the last couple of days, and I'm like, I don't know that I would go, because there's one or two guys that I'm still close to, like we stay in contact. But the other guys, even though I have affection and respect for them, I don't have any energetic commonality with them. And many of us, we were roommates, housemates, rebel-rousing mates, all these kind of, things in college. And they're really good people. They're amazing guys that I connected with deeply in college and were my foundation for many years in college and even after college. But I think back to when the group got together in 2019, and I think about, I'm recapitulating the conversations that happened in that gathering. And those conversations were about homes and about lives and about work and about family and about identity and politics and news and church and jobs and all these kind of things. And I started thinking, it was just this weekend, I was thinking, all of that's context. And what do I have in commonality with that context? I want to share also that I went to a private Lutheran college. I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was a really good education. I went to what's called Texas Lutheran University. It was a rigorous German university. It was, in my mind, in my estimation and interpretation many years ago, and it's always for the past 30 or 40 years been ranked one of the top small schools in the country. I believe I got a great education. It was a wonderful liberal arts education where you were literally taught to think. But I look, but even me saying that, that's my past. That is my past from nearly 40 years ago. And I thought about going back to hang out with these guys. And as I'm sharing this, think about people in your life that maybe they don't fit energetically anymore. And I'm looking at all the context because as I was mentioning Texas Lutheran University, a lot of my friends fall into two categories. They're either PhDs in chemistry or biology or doctors, or they are pastors. And by the way, completely off topic, You want to talk about some wild kids in college? It was the PKs, the pastor's kids. I mean, I think back to things those guys did in college, and I'm like, holy shit, they're leading congregations now. And that's what they did in college. Oh my God, if their congregation knew that. As I look back at this, I'm thinking, okay, so if we're going to be at, it was my fraternity, Little Brothers, the one hosting this on Horseshoe Bay in Texas. And it's water skiing and golf and fishing and all these kind of things from a nice home, a nice property. And I'm like, what would be my purpose of going? Because I would almost feel like a fraud because I couldn't speak up. I could communicate about politics or the economy or life circumstances or life context, but there's not a single person there except the person hosting. His name is Jay, that I can talk to at a deeper level, that even he would think that I'm pretty much crazy this day and age, but he would like, yeah, there's something here. I get it. Why would I go and live in all of that old context? I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet, and I'm still thinking through it. But I want to share here, the more we grow and evolve, and the more we live from higher context, the more many of us are inclined to leave lower frequency, lower identity context. This is why the more we grow and evolve, the more we grow and evolve out of people. So, what came to mind is a phrase that I've used before, and it's a phrase in physics, the implicate and the explicate universe. The explicate universe is what you can see. It's the news, it's relationships, it's roads and homes and cars and money and all these things that we can see and experience physically. That is the explicate, the external universe. The implicate universe, and science says we cannot observe 97% of the implicate universe. It's all mental. It's all in here. Or it's the things like, for example, microwaves and things in physics that we cannot see. Most of us live our lives by the explicate universe, meaning the external universe. We live it by the explicate human identity. And then we live in that identity and we define ourselves. You're listening right now, that context. How do you define yourself? If I were to ask you right now, we're just sitting in a living room across from each other, and I said, tell me 5 things about you. Not all of you, but what most of you would say is, oh, okay, I grew up in Boston. I went to college at MIT or wherever you went to school. I do XYZ for a living. I have 4 kids. I do this, I do that. And I think it's important to recognize that's all explicate, external identity. It's all explicate context. When I say context, a word that might be a little simpler to understand is frame of your life. Your subconscious identity is your context. It is the frame of your life. And this is why it's important. At this time in human history, there was so much change happening in the explicate world. This is why it is so important to regather your power that you've given away to the external and to pull that power back. I want to segue here for a second and say, no, I'm not going to place a commercial here. But in shamanism, one of the first things that I was taught is that a warrior, not a worrier, a warrior, meaning a spiritual warrior, a warrior conserves their energy, meaning that a warrior needs to stalk, a warrior needs to hunt, and they conserve their energy so they have it when they need it. But if we're living by the explicate context, the external context, oh my God, in my opinion, that is draining. I mean, all you've got to do is open up the news, and it's almost like you read the news for one moment, and it's like you've run an entire, fucking marathon with all of the chaos in the world. So, and by the way, the chaos is in the world, and it's not in you unless you bring it into you. But I look at all this, and I'm like, okay, because back to my point here in the whole episode is I am in this world, but I am not of this world. And if I recognize and I live from being in this world, I'm going to go bananas because I'm going to see Putin and Trump and this and Zelensky and whatever the hell his name is, the vice president, J.D. Vance, and Supreme Court did this and Bill Gates did this and what the hell's his name? Musk. Elon Musk did this. It's a waste of energy because none of that matters to my soul. So, what I'm sharing with you in this episode is your power. Your power is in nothing tangible. It's not in governments. It's not in Social Security. It's not in people. It's not in social programs. It's in none of that. It's not even in business. Your power is understanding the context of your being. And the larger context of your being that sets you free is when you recognize, yeah, okay, I'm down on this planet and I'm in this world, but I'm not of this world. Because when you recognize that you're not of this world, think about what kind of power that opens up for you. When you live from that place, think about this for a moment, ponder this, consider this. When you live from, I am not of this world, I am from, you can, pick any phrase you want, the cosmos, the universe, divine mind, the quantum dimension, the quantum field. If you truly were to live from that place, how then can you not be love, unconditional love, all the time? Now, what I want to point out, that one has been a beast for me and for many people. I don't think anyone on this planet, you're here because we're learning lessons and we're growing and evolving. I don't know anyone that is unconditionally loving all the time. Don Javier, he has never not been unconditionally loving to me in 28 years. I mean, he's been a rock by my side as me being a shaman's apprentice, but I'm not in his head. I mean, I don't know when he's not in, unconditional love or any of that, but I've never seen it. Meaning I've never seen him be angry or mad or critical or judgmental or spiteful. I've never one time in 28 years ever seen that, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So what we have to do if we want to heal ourselves is, and bring the wholeness to ourselves, is we have to live from our spiritual context. Because spiritual context, the spiritual frame, is more powerful than the human frame. The spiritual context is infinite. The human context is finite, because I don't know a single person listening to this podcast, their physical body ain't gonna die. I mean, every single one of you here, your physical body one day is going to stop breathing and you're going to be dead, as they say, food for worms. But how do we get into our physical context? The explicate. We get into that when we forget the power we have as the implicate, as the higher context of divine mind. And when we get into things like rent, bills, fear, shame, greed, news of the world, what Mango Head did, Donald Trump, what Putin did, what Macaroon did, what Trudeau did, what this person did, what that person did, we're literally not living from where we are of. We're living from our point of reference on this physical planet. And I'm going to share with you, it's a lot easier to stay in love and gratitude and peace when we recognize that we are in this world, but not of this world. So a simple fix for you right now, stop consuming content. And I'm not telling you to do it for the rest of your life. But what I'm sharing with you, I would tell you to go on a 30-day binge from content. And that would be social media. That would be, in particular, the news. Go on a binge and purge yourself energetically of all of this lower frequency context that human beings live from. And the reason I say at least 30 days, there's been some research on this about how the brain starts to regulate and be healthy again once we get off this toxicity, which, by the way, this toxicity makes people like Zuckerberg very, very wealthy. And it's toxicity for the most part. I mean, humans, if we were more highly evolved, we could use social media at a higher and different level and for a different purpose, but we don't. We use it for toxicity. So I would say just observe. Are you living in this world, or are you living not of this world? And hopefully I didn't mix that up as I was sharing that with you guys. But be in this world, but not of this world. And how are you living? And what does it mean if you recognize that, yes, I'm in this world, but not of this world? What would you let go of if you truly came, not to understand that, but you truly came to know that? What would you let go of? So your transformational takeaway is, how do you identify in this life? Because as long as you identify as a particular type of human being, you will be trapped in that context. You will be trapped in that life. And as I think I said earlier, if I said, tell me 3 things about yourself, if you're starting to go through your head saying, what would I say? What 3 things? You're already identifying with a human context. That is your trap. That is the human identity that is lower frequency, lower vibration. And this identity literally is the filter of your life. Because if you said, okay, I am Russian, I am male, I am white, making that up, you're going to filter everything through that lower identity. And that's because you are living from being in the world as opposed to not being of this world. And you're going to live everything through your filter. So look at your life right now and look at all the things that you struggle with. Look at all the things that you want that you don't have. These are all a reflection of your identity filter and lower context. Because when you live from the higher context, being in this world but not of this world, nothing in this world can hurt you, because nothing can hurt your soul. I want to continue this a little bit more in the Secret podcast and put a different spin on it. For now, remember that be in this world, but not of this world. And when you live and when you come to know that and you live from that place, your life will change very dramatically and very quickly. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you over on the Secret podcast or on another episode. Bye-bye.